watching Goal Line Extended, presented by Lacrosse Flash.
What's going on, everyone? Welcome to Goal Line Extended. Today is Friday, April 16, and I'm your host, Ryan Hulsebos. Thank you for joining us for our 8th show of GLE. We are happy that you are here watching or listening. Goal Line Extended is available on YouTube and as a podcast for your viewing or listening conveniences. Make sure to check out all of our links in the description. Social media links are there as well, and check out lacrosseflash.com for more. But we have a big show planned for today. Lacrosse Flash Editor-in-Chief Austin Owens will be joining me momentarily to look at the 2021 PLL schedule as it was dropped on Wednesday morning. An 11-week season that starts on Friday night, June 4th at Gillette Stadium between the Expansion Cannons and the Redwoods. We'll be taking a look at the schedule, some of the cities, and some games to circle on your calendars as we approach and then get the 2021 season underway. And then in a little bit, Flash reporter and defender for the Concordia University St. Paul women's lacrosse team, Maki Jenner, will be joining me to look ahead to this weekend in college lacrosse. Some exciting games to look forward to across the ACC, Big Ten, Patriot League, and Big East. Maki will be joining me very soon to talk about all of it. And then to close out today's show, Archer's Attackman, Grant Ament, will be joining us here on Goal Line Extended. Looking forward to that conversation as he gears up for the 2021 PLL season. And Austin, we are getting geared up as well as all lacrosse fans should be. Conference tournaments are approaching, and then the NCAA championship, and then the PLL season, which we now have as a full schedule for, and we will be talking about that now. Austin, welcome to the show. What's going on?
Ryan, I'm not too sure how I got on the show today, considering all of the amazing individuals we have, but I appreciate you having me.
Oh, yeah, we're circling around here, making sure we get everybody on here, GLE, all our lacrosse.
You get the worst out of the way first.
What's going on?
You're getting the worst out of the way first.
Absolutely not. Absolutely not. So, hey, Austin, we're looking ahead to this 2021 season. We got the schedule Wednesday, and here are the terms. 11 weeks in total, including 7 weeks of regular season lacrosse and an all-star weekend that will take place on week 6 on July 18, and then a 3-round playoff to determine a champion beginning Friday, June 4th, and wrapping up on Sunday, September 19. Over those 7 weeks of regular season lacrosse, each team will play a total of 9 games, with the regular season games being laid out for 1 game on Friday night, 2 on Saturday, and then 2 games on Sunday, a total of 5 games each weekend, the outlier being week 8, which will have 2 games on Friday along with 2 on Saturday and Sunday. So 6 games for week 8 in Albany, which means that with 8 teams, we will see the 2 teams that played on Friday play again against a different opponent on Sunday. So each weekend we will have 2 teams play 2 games, 1 on Friday, and then again on Sunday, week 8, we will see 4 teams play 2 games. And the playoffs are laid out on a regular quarterfinal, semifinal, and then final format where the best 6 teams will qualify for the playoffs. Austin, before we talk about the cities the league will be stopping at on its 2021 tour and some of the matchups we're looking forward to watching, just looking at this schedule, how it's broken down, it's very interesting, but we kind of see the reasoning behind it, particularly in the number of bye weeks we see and kind of that time off. What are your biggest takeaways from this schedule drop and the structure that the league has decided to go with in terms of the season and scheduling games this year?
The first thing I think when I look at the schedule is that I really like that they've paced it out a little bit more than maybe we would have thought initially. When you look at it, I mean, what I thought was going to happen off the jump was that it was going to be sort of how the regular season with the PLL in 2019 was, where it was every week back to back to back until the season ended. Even with the playoffs and the All-Star game was sandwiched in between 2 weeks, and that was that. But when you look at it now, it's kind of like I really like this. Especially because coming off of the condensed year last year, everything's stretched out. I don't know if this is just my thought on it. It allows players maybe not a little more time to get rested, but just it's going to be a grind this summer, going from city to city, having to travel a lot, 2 games in a weekend. I mean, they did that in a matter of a couple of days. They played 4 and 7 days, most of these teams last year. So, I mean, the thing I look at the most, obviously being Canadian, is that the border is such a big thing, and the way it's going, I mean, just here in Ontario it's an absolute disaster, to be quite honest with you. And when you look at it, it's not going to be solved by the time the PLL season starts in June. And even when they start training camp in May, I would assume it would be, it's not going to be solved. So the biggest thing I think is when you look at a team like Chaos, say, or the Water Dogs, or those teams that skew a little more Canadian. I think the last time we talked, when we looked at Chaos, it was kind of like, how is this team going to do this when the majority of their roster is made up of guys that some of them live south of the border, obviously, but most of them hail from Canada. And the 17 quarantine when they have to either go back. I'm not too sure. We were talking about this before, how the quarantine works from Canada to the US. I'm not sure, but when they come back, they have to quarantine for 7 days now. So it's going to be tough. I like how they've moved it out a bit, and it also just gives the teams a little bit more time to sort of decide what they want to do for their next game. Maybe get in some practices, game plan a little more, rather than the championship series where, I don't know, you'd play a team on Friday night and you'd play another team like less than 12 hours later on the Saturday. Like it's going to give the teams a lot more time. So I'm looking forward to that, and just in general, looking forward to the season in general. It's nice to see some lacrosse actually to look forward to on our schedule.
Absolutely. And it seems like the league keeping those quarantine measures kind of in mind when putting this schedule together. And then one other thing that you brought up, the 2019 schedule, and then I'll bring up the 2020 schedule, because originally we're looking at it, we're thinking 8 teams. So in 2019, we had 6. Each team played once a weekend. You know, obviously it worked out because we had an even number of teams. Last year, we went in with 7, and obviously we had the tournament bubble. But the original plan was for some teams to have bye weeks. And that was going to be weird because obviously it's like, oh, you go to your favorite, the league comes to your city, but oh, you're let's say a Chaos fan. Oh, but the Chaos aren't playing this weekend. So it's interesting to see this year. They ensured, obviously they have the even number of 8, so they could have just had 4 matchups each weekend, but going kind of above and beyond, making it 5, kind of condensing it. I saw a quote from someone that works in the league where it's like we have more time off in between weekends, but then when we're in the weekends, it's going to be tough because it's going to be a lot of games really happening all at once, really. And I guess as the Ravens are saying, trying to pack as much lacrosse action into those weekends as possible. So the PLL trying to work around, like I said, some of those quarantine measures that some of these players will be faced with while crossing the border between the U.S. and Canada. Also making sure to accommodate the long list of coaches that play in the PLL with recruiting looking to start up soon. A handful of bye weeks added in during both the regular season and between the quarterfinal and semifinal to allow for player travel, quarantining if needed, and then coaching. As for the locations, week 1 will return to Gillette Stadium in Foxborough, Massachusetts. Week 2 will be at Kennesaw State University outside Atlanta. Week 3 will be at Homewood Field, the home of the Johns Hopkins Blue Jays. Week 4, the weekend of July 4, will be out in Long Island, and week 5 will be in Minneapolis, Minnesota. The All-Star Game and Skills Competition is scheduled for July 18 at PayPal Park in San Jose, and then the regular season will wrap up in Colorado Springs and Albany. So a handful of old and new locations being added to the 2021 slate, and then the quarterfinals will be back in Salt Lake City at Rio Tinto Stadium. The semifinals will be in Philadelphia, and the championship game will be held at Audi Field in Washington, D.C. So for the most part, these are cities that we expected. Colorado Springs kind of surprised me. I was thinking they might want to take a few more trips down south to the Carolinas, maybe Florida, possibly Texas, especially with those states kind of having more relaxed COVID-19 protocols. But with most of these games taking place up north, the league, I'd imagine, hoping that these restrictions will loosen sometime soon. Capacities will open up so that they can get more fans into these stadiums. What is your outlook on this 2021 tour? Some of the stops you're excited to see the league make?
You know, I'm excited for a couple. I mean, Boston was a slam dunk. I think San Jose for the All-Star Game is a great choice. I mean, just having the guys out in warm weather is going to be a lot of fun. I mean, some of the other ones are just slam dunks. Baltimore's an easy one at Homewood. Albany is a location I believe they sold out in the 2019 season. It's just, you can't really go wrong with the fan base that the PLL has, and I think they're sort of striking while the product's hot and while there's sort of a market for lacrosse that we've been without since the championship series ended. So when you look at it, I mean, the one that sticks out to me that was kind of interesting was Atlanta and Kennesaw State. Obviously what they've gone through with their voting legislation and everything like that. Obviously the MLB All-Star Game was pulled and moved to Colorado because of it. But then, I mean, today I didn't even know this. Jordan Johnson, a quick shout out to him. He did a piece for Lacrosse Flash, and he mentioned that the Ravens are actually going to be donating to a nonprofit that helps with that situation. So they're turning a bad situation into a good one and being able to take the cause, or not the cause, but to be able to take the product out to the fans that are in that area and really use a market that wasn't really tapped into much. When I look at it, I mean, they didn't miss on any, obviously. Like I said, with the Canadian border, I would have loved to see Hamilton or Toronto again, but there was no way that was going to happen with the way it was going. But fingers crossed for the future, maybe. We will see. I know the Ravens don't like Canada a little bit, or sorry, they do like Canada. They don't not like Canada is what I was trying to say. Little double negative for you there on a Friday. Lovely. Yeah. So, I'm just excited, man. It's it sounds like the last answer I gave you, but there's no bad answer to any of these. All these sites are going to be awesome. The crowds are going to be packed as much as they can with the capacity. I don't know. I'm assuming it'll be a state by state basis, but we're ready to go. Everybody's ready to go. Everybody's ready to see these guys back on the field. So there's no wrong answer to this. Every venue is going to be amazing.
The league really making it a point to make stops in not just lacrosse hotbeds, but in most of those major MLL cities. Obviously, the PLL merging with the MLL this past offseason, expecting that to continue on as long as the PLL sticks with this tour-based model, along with the terms of the season and the stops on the 2021 tour. The league also gifted us every matchup of the season, which starts with the expansion Cannons with league co-founder Paul Rabel and former Patriots and Super Bowl winning wide receiver Chris Hogan taking on the Redwoods. That will be a Friday night game at 7 Eastern at Hogan's old home, Gillette Stadium. The Cannons and Redwoods, the first two teams to play a weekend doubleheader. The Cannons will take on the Water Dogs in the first Sunday game, and the Redwoods will play Chrome. But looking ahead to some of these matchups, I wouldn't say we exactly have rivalries here in the PLO just yet, but some games that we are looking forward to. The Whipsnakes and Chaos, a rematch of the 2020 championship game. We will have that one on tap for week 1. We'll get to see the Redwoods and Whipsnakes go at it twice, the first time in week 5 in Minneapolis and the second time week 8 in Albany. Obviously, 2019 championship game, 2020 semifinal game. The Atlas and Cannons will also play twice. Paul Rabel going up against his former team. And really, it's hard to pinpoint games at this point because, like I said, there are no rivalries. All these teams are coming into this season with so much talent, and there really aren't any legit, we don't know what's going to happen, obviously. Obviously, the PLO, just 2 seasons in, no rivalries. We don't know how the season will play out. But come week 7 and 8, there could be some big games with some playoff implications just based on the 2020 standings, although a condensed season in which we saw the worst team in the round robin make a championship run. But looking at some of the top teams from last season, some of their end of the season matchups, the Archers, Redwoods, Chaos, and the defending champion Whipsnakes in action solely for the most part against each other over the final 2 weeks of the regular season. Keep in mind, those were the final 4 teams in the semifinals a year ago. Chrome also in that mix as they play the Chaos in week 7. But Austin, what are some of the games that you're most looking forward to as we just kind of skim over this schedule?
Looking at the first week, I mean, it's got to be the Cannons. Obviously, you're not going to want to miss Lyle Thompson sitting up for his first PLL game, and he does it twice in the first week. I mean, Chris Hogan being on the team and 2-time Super Bowl champion being back in Foxborough, it's almost like they planned it. I'm not saying, I'm just saying. But I mean, looking at it, I love watching Chaos. I love watching the Whipsnakes. They'll obviously get going in the second day of the season. That'll be unreal. A couple of games, actually, when you look at it, I mean, Chrome's going to be in a lot of very interesting games, and it's because of one individual, and you know who I'm going to say, and it's Matt Gaudette. The Chaos rematch is going to come up this year. Obviously, what he did in that first game kind of came back to bite him as Chaos beat them to knock him out of the playoffs. That was a big storyline. And the one with the Redwoods as well is going to be very interesting because obviously the one game they played against each other, Garrett Epple was suspended after that altercation with Gaudette. So that'll be one to keep an eye on. Going into the later parts of the season, I mean, it's just like you said, it's going to be guys that are jockeying for position. It might be teams that are jockeying to, be part of that first overall pick conversation. And with guys going back to school next year, you never know what it's going to look like. You see what happened to this year's class. But when you look at it, the last day of the season, the Chaos and the Redwoods are playing each other. Those are probably going to be 2 teams that I couldn't tell you what they're going to look like, honestly, and what they're going to play like. Chaos could do the same thing they did last year, and sports is such a beautiful thing. They go 0-4 in the round robin and then make the title game, like just beautiful. The Redwoods were 1 save away or 1 goal away from making it to the championship against the Whips.
Brent Adams dunk attempt away from making it to the championship.
Yeah, I mean, if you want to get off that for a sec, he looks like an absolute legend if he makes it, but obviously he doesn't look great when he comes back down and scores the other way. So it was the latter, unfortunately for him, but they were 1 shot away from making it to the chip and defeating the Whipsnake, excuse me. And then the last game of the year is probably the 2 biggest wagons in the league, if you ask me. It's the Archers and the Whipsnakes. Like Grant Ament, Matt Rambo, Zed Williams, Connor Fields is going to be there. I don't know what kind of role he's going to play, but Graham Hossick's going to be guarding Matt Rambo. Yes, please sign me up. So it's gonna be fun throughout. I mean, every team plays each other, which is a nice thing. We didn't see that in the round robin last year. It was certain teams played each other, and certain teams didn't even get to play one another. So you're gonna see what each team stacks up like against each other, and I think that's the most exciting thing here. But those are sort of the games I'm going to look for. I'm going to be tuned in with the popcorn for Lyle, though. He's going to have a big game to start in Gillette.
I would imagine Lyle Thompson comes out firing that first weekend in Gillette Stadium. 2 games, a show. Just sit back, relax, and enjoy the show because Lyle Thompson will be putting one on. Another important part of this schedule, just to notice, it seems like the league will no longer be doing a consolation bracket to determine the first overall pick like they did in 2019. It looks like the top 6 teams will make it to the playoffs, and then the final 2 teams will have the first and second round college draft selections respectively. So straying away from that model, but the 2021 season is almost upon us. We now have a full schedule with matchups, and you can go ahead now and purchase tickets. Some very exciting stuff as we get closer and closer to the season. But before we get there, the PLL College Draft set for Monday, April 26th. We're currently finalizing our plan for how we want to roll out shows, but it's looking like 2 as normal next week, Tuesday and Friday, and then 1 released on Monday ahead of the draft. We'll have a full analysis on the players available, the needs from each team, where some of those players might fall, as well as interviews with most of the head coaches ahead of the draft, and we'll wrap up those interviews following the draft. We're still in the process of scheduling those, but we're very excited to be bringing those to you right here on Goal Line Extended. Austin, before I let you go, I want a bold prediction. I know it's early, but who are the top 6 teams that we see represented in the playoffs the weekend of August 20 and 21 in Utah?
Oh, that is a tough one. Whips, number 1. I think that's. I'm gonna go Whips, Archers 1, 2.
Are the Whip Snakes going to lose a game?
I would be surprised if they don't over. Yeah, they're bound to lose at some point. I mean, that's just they got to lose. I don't know what game they lose, but I mean, over it's a little easier. Not easy. It's not ever easy to run the table, but 4-game round robin and then a playoff round. It was a little easier than going a full 11-week schedule running the table, but never say never with Stagnita's team. They've obviously gone out and absolutely dominated the last 2 years. Oh God, the 3 and Chrome's going to be up there. I think for me, they're another team that's, I don't know if I'd use the term wagon just yet, but they are about as close to a wagon without being as possible. I think there may be, like I said in my needs article, I think there may be one short stick D-Midi away, like a Peter Dearth or a Ryan Terefenko away from being one of the best rosters in the league, especially with Scanoni. I'm sorry, I butchered his name. Forgive me, Sean. But he's going to be a great ad, and I think that team's going to be unreal with Randy Stotts. Oh, God, as for the last 2, and I'm sorry, I'm stalling for time here, the Redwoods are going to be up there, and I think, who am I forgetting here? Atlas, I don't know what they're going to be until they take the field, to be quite honest with you. They could very well be in that. They could be a 6 seed. They could be the last team in the league. I don't know what to think of them at this point. If their defense and goaltending holds up, I think they'll do pretty well, though. So for top 6, yeah, the Redwoods are going to sneak in, I'd say. They're too good around. They just need to win some more draws. And like you've been beating that drum, if they get TD Erlin, they're going to be very, very good. It's kind of hard to tell. The Water Dogs, I think, are the one team, and the Cannons that I've missed out on. I think the Water Dogs, the Cannons, and the Atlas are probably going to be the 3 teams that sort of battle for that 6 spot. And I would like to say the Cannons make it, but I also am a big Water Dogs guy because I'm a big Andy Copeland fan. So it's up in the air right now, honestly. But the top 3, I'd say, are probably one. I'm babbling here. I apologize because I'm all over the place. But it's going to be the Whips, the Archers, I would imagine, unless something goes completely wrong, and then some combination of Chrome, Chaos, Redwoods, Cannons. I would think I might have missed a team there, but it's going to be fun. We're going to see in the first couple of weeks what these teams are made of and what we can expect out of them from the season. So we'll check back. Give me till like week 3, and we'll revisit this.
We'll give it a little bit. You bring up the Chrome needing another short stick defensive mid. They pick 3rd and 12th. I was about to say 3rd and 13th. 3rd and 12th. So Peter Dearth, Ryan Terefenko might be around at that time, even though Greg, you told me the other day that Ryan Terefenko might be a first-round talent. We will see as that draft unfolds. But Austin, I want to thank you so much for joining me here on GLE, breaking down the PLO's recent schedule release. Again, we will have much more coverage ahead of the college draft next week, so be on the lookout for that, as well as interviews with your team's favorite head coach. We had Chaos head coach Andy Towers on Monday, an absolutely electric interview. We're hoping to follow that up with each one of these other interviews that we do. Austin, thank you again. Maki Jenner will be joining me next.
You're watching Goal Line Extended, presented by Lacrosse Flash.
Welcome back to Goal Line Extended. Glad you are here with us. Some big news coming out of the Premier Lacrosse League this week, with 1 week ahead of the college draft next Monday, April 26th. Austin Owens and I just discussed the schedule release and how it is laid out. Make sure to circle back and around if you missed that conversation. And then if you watched it, perfect, because you're not going to want to miss this one, as Maki Jenner joins me, Lacrosse Flash reporter and defender for the Concordia University women's lacrosse team. Maki, what's going on?
Hey, not much. About to go to practice, so glad to be here.
Awesome, Maki. Hey, we have another huge weekend of college lacrosse on deck this weekend. It started last night as number 3 Virginia hosted number 4 Duke. Now, disclaimer for everyone watching or listening, we are recording this ahead of that game, so unfortunately, no post-game analysis. But looking ahead to this game, the face-off battle should be really exciting to watch. Two fantastic draw guys going at it, but both of these teams are so talented, and they feature a few college draft hopefuls as we near that draft. Michael Sowers, Dox Aiken, Charlie Bertrand, JT Giles Harris, Jared Connors, just to name a few. What are you looking for, specifically out of these guys as the draft gets closer in an attempt to really try to raise their draft stock?
Yeah, I think the focus for Duke will definitely be their offense. Coming off of last weekend against the Cavaliers, they scored a season low of only 8 goals last week. And so I think that this weekend, they really have to look to Sowers to kind of produce that offense, as well as O'Neal. But I'm sure that they're going to try and come out hot. So that's definitely something that we'll be looking to for Duke this weekend.
Duke and Virginia went down last night. Again, no score analysis from us, unfortunately, as we are recording ahead of that game, but some games to look forward to tonight. Michigan travels to Penn State for a rematch of Michigan's 2-goal win in Ann Arbor in March, a very important game for both teams with seeding on the line. Former Penn State attackman Grant Ament will be joining me in a little bit to talk more about that one. We got some America East action as well today. Number 18 Stony Brook will host Binghamton at 3, and Albany is at Vermont and set for a 6 p.m. start. Stony Brook and Vermont at the top of the conference at 5-1. Albany trailing by just 1 game. And then the first of 2 games between the number 7 seed Lehigh and Lafayette. We'll talk more about the other games going on in the Patriot League in a little bit, but Lehigh looking to extend their undefeated season with back-to-back games against a currently winless Lafayette team. The first of those 2 games starts at 7:30 tonight. And then tomorrow we have a full slate of college lacrosse action in the ACC. Number 5 North Carolina, all back-to-back losses against Duke and Virginia, travels to upstate New York to take on the 9th-ranked team in the country, the Syracuse Orange. That game starts at 3 p.m. Eastern time. The Tar Heels have dropped their last 2 games, but by a combined margin of 3 goals. This team just getting into it in terms of their ACC gauntlet. They have Notre Dame and Duke at home to finish out the regular season, so still absolutely in the mix for that spot for that top spot in the conference. What does UNC need to do this weekend to get this big win on the road and get back on track?
Yeah, North Carolina has the number 2 scoring offense in the NCAA right now. And, they have some of the best players with Chris Gray, Nikki Solomon, and Will Perry. So I think that they just really got to come out strong and keep it rolling. Last game was a tough one. And I think that they just really have to keep continuing to produce, and also on the defensive side, stay away from the penalties, because if, Syracuse can get the ball and capitalize, it'll definitely be a dogfight.
Speaking of teams that have dropped 2 straight ACC games this season, Syracuse on the road at Duke and at home against Notre Dame. The Orange took losses 2 and 3 on the season in their first 2 conference games since beating Virginia 20-10 back in late February. A win over Albany last week was nice, but now we're back into ACC play. North Carolina this weekend, and then a rematch with Virginia and Notre Dame, the number 3 and 2 teams in the country, respectively. What does Syracuse need to prove in this one? Because they're 5-3. They recently lost what was supposed to be a scheduled game against Utah on May 8th. It was going to be their last regular season game of the season. We don't want to speculate too much and think of the worst, but there could be a world where Syracuse finishes under 500, especially if their last home game of the regular season here against North Carolina does not go their way. What does Syracuse need to prove to you in this one to signal that they are legit contenders?
Yeah, I think in their last game against Albany, they kind of showed a little bit more composure after that loss before. I think that once they have the ball and they play easy 6-on-6, they're good to go. Same on the defensive side. But they just really need to step it up on the offensive side and take more shots. They have some great offensive guys on their roster, and they just need to keep shooting till they're hot, because honestly, they're last right now in the ACC. And so they got to definitely step that up if they want a chance in the tournament.
Elsewhere in the ACC, Virginia, the number 3 team in the country, will host their final out-of-conference game of the regular season. They will welcome that Utah Utes team, either sitting at 10-2 off a win would be North Carolina, or would be Virginia 9-3 after a loss to Duke last night. And as for Duke and Notre Dame, they both have the weekend off ahead of their rematch next Thursday. We'll be talking much more about that on Tuesday. Let's move on to the Big Ten. Like I said before, Grant Ament will be joining me soon to discuss Michigan at Penn State tonight. Both teams are 2-6 with one more regular season game next weekend. So an important game for both of these teams in terms of seeding for the Big Ten tournament. That number 4 seed looks to still be in play. Grant Ament will be with us soon to talk about that one. But the other 2 games in the conference, number 8, Rutgers will host Johns Hopkins. The Blue Jays also in contention for that 4th seed, while Rutgers trying to lock up the 2 seed in the first round bye in the Big Ten tournament. That one is scheduled for 5 p.m. Saturday. And then on Sunday, number 12, Ohio State will travel to College Park to take on the number 1 team in the country, the Maryland Terrapins, trying to finish off an undefeated season and look ahead to that Big Ten tournament, already locked in to that number 1 seed in the first round bye. But Ohio State looking to play spoiler, 4-4 on the year. We saw them take Rutgers to the wire a few weeks ago. Ryan Terefenko, he's back. He looks great. What do the Buckeyes need to do to pull off this upset? And likewise for Maryland, kind of in full control of their destiny. What do you want to see from them as they look to close out their regular season at home Sunday against Ohio State and then next weekend at Johns Hopkins?
Yeah, these 2 Big Ten teams played each other on March 20th, and Maryland came out on top 16-8. So it'll be an interesting matchup, as Ohio State hasn't been too consistent this year, as you said. Maryland has one of the top scoring offenses led by Bernhard and Maltz, as we know. And Ohio State's defense is definitely going to have to step up if they're going to limit their scoring chances. Ohio State's also going to have to produce on the offensive side of the ball in order to stay in it. They too have some big names like Trey LeClaire, Griffin Hughes, and Jack Myers, who are going to have to take charge on the offensive side of the ball to make sure that they're capitalizing on their chances. Also in terms of the face-off, Ohio State's NCO has a higher winning percentage, so that could be key if they're able to win the face-off and keep the ball on the offensive side. It definitely could be a closer game than a lot of people might think.
We are looking forward to that one, Ohio State and Maryland, and I'm imagining that by Tuesday we will have a much better idea kind of how the Big Ten tournament should be laid out. But 3 great games to look forward to, and another really high-profile game that we are excited about out of the Big East. Denver headed to D.C. to take on Georgetown, a rematch of Denver's win a month ago. 13-7 was that final, and Denver seems to be rolling. TD's getting comfortable. The offense is starting to come together and get hot. A few other notable Yale transfers, Jackson Morrill, Lucas Kotler, they're starting to get into a groove. They both had hat tricks last weekend against Villanova, trying to clinch that top spot in the America East heading into the conference tournament, and starts tomorrow against Georgetown. What does Denver need to do to get this win and stay at the top of this conference?
Yeah, so in their last matchup, Georgetown came out with a 2-0 lead against the Pios, but they just couldn't come back. So the Pioneers definitely need to come out strong. They have, like you said, their transfer in Morrill. They have Ethan Walker, Jack Hanna, big offensive guys that are able to produce if they can keep the ball down there. Like you said, TD Ireland had a tough game against Villanova, only going 8-14. I think their sophomore face-off guy, Alex Stathkis, is also a great option for them to put in if that's kind of looking down, because the face-off guys both have kind of close percentages. So they both really just need to come out strong and continue rolling on offense, like you said.
We will see how Denver comes out here offensively as you're bringing up all these weapons that they have. On the other side, Georgetown, led by senior attackman Jake Carraway, freshman attackman TJ Haley, and sophomore midfielder Graham Bundy. 45 points for Carraway, 37 assists from Haley and 26 goals from Bundy. The catalyst really of this Georgetown offense, and then Gibson Smith back from injury on the defensive end, one of the best pulls in the country. These guys are going to need to produce and produce a lot if they want to win this game. What do you expect to see out of the number 11 team in the country?
Yeah, I think that they will come out. I think in this Big East rivalry, it always is a closer game than expected. And like you said, Caraway is just an unreal guy on the offensive end. And if he can rack up the goals, I really do think that it will be a close matchup. I think that their defense, like you said, having their best pull back in the country right now will be a huge plus for them on the defensive side to stop these weapons that Denver does have on their offense.
Denver at Georgetown in D.C. Saturday at 12 p.m. Eastern. We also have some Patriot League action to look forward to this weekend as the conference seeding begins to shake out. As I said before, Lehigh heads to Lafayette tonight and then hosts Lafayette on Sunday, looking to get 2 wins to add to the season total. And then number 14 Loyola will host Navy, and number 10 Army will host Boston University. Boston U ahead of Navy by half a game in the Patriot League standings. So more seeding implications at play this weekend. And another game to watch this weekend on Saturday, UMass heads to Towson following Towson's win over number 15 Hofstra earlier this week. The CAA making things interesting here down the stretch with a handful of notable upsets. Maki, I want to thank you so much for joining me. Before I let you go, what a game from Charlotte North this past weekend, and frankly all season. 47 goals, including 10 this past weekend in a win over Virginia Tech. As a defender yourself in college lacrosse, watching her play, what makes her game special as an offensive player?
You know what? Her lacrosse IQ is like no other. She just knows where to move. She knows where to feed. She knows where to shoot. As a defender watching her, she's just so shifty. Her stick skills are unreal. And, I just think it takes a lot to be able to defend her, and you never know where that shot's going to come from or where it's going to go. So she is an absolute stud to watch. I've heard she's a great teammate as well. So just to be able to see her have that success at BC is awesome. And I know that she'll put out a few more highlight reel goals this season. So I'm definitely looking forward to watching that.
We are looking forward to those highlight reel plays as well. And hopefully throughout the rest of her career, obviously, we're seeing a little bit more women's pro game getting schedules as well laid out, just like the men's pro game. Maki, thank you again for joining me. A big weekend of college lacrosse coming up, and we will be back on Tuesday to recap it all. For everyone watching and listening, stay where you are. Grant Ament will be joining me next. Thank you again, Maki. Welcome back to the show. Friday, April 16. I'm your host, Ryan Hulsebos, and you are watching or listening to Goal Line Extended, a new show that debuted just under a month ago out of the Lacrosse Flash podcast network. We are glad that you are here, hopefully enjoying the show. And if you are, make sure that you are subscribed, following our accounts, and obviously Lacrosse Flash as well for all the latest news and analysis. Joining me next is one of the most electrifying young players in the game of lacrosse right now. As a redshirt junior in 2019, he was the Big Ten Offensive Player of the Year and a first-team All-American as he went on to set Big Ten records in points and NCAA records in assists. The first overall pick of the 2020 PLL College Draft and the unofficial 2020 Rookie of the Year during the PLL bubble in Utah, all while creating some highlight reel plays. Joining me now, Archer's Attackman, Grant Ament. Grant, what's going on, man? Welcome to the show.
That was a heck of an intro. Thanks for having me.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. Always got to put in the big intros there whenever we're bringing people on. Hey, a great rookie season that you put together there in 2020. Probably not the year that you exactly envisioned. Obviously, with COVID, we had the bubble tournament rather than the full scheduled slate that we're going to see here in 2021. But in terms of your production on the field, you were we were expecting big things, but you were absolutely unbelievable, my guy. Like I said, the league didn't officially announce a rookie of the tournament, but unofficially we will hand you that nod up there among the league leaders in points and assists, setting that bar high for the rest of the league to follow. But you seemed to fit in perfectly with Will Manny, Marcus Holman, Tom Schreiber, the rest of that offense, Ryan Ambler, Christian Mazzone, in what was fairly a short preparation for a tournament-style season that you probably haven't played in since, your high school days. What was that tournament experience like, especially with it coming in your first season in the league?
Yeah, it was a phenomenal experience for me. As you said, I think I kind of was able to plug in decently well for the Archers in general, just with their style of play. And it just translated very easily for me in terms of, the type of offense that I played in college. And then, when you suit up alongside those guys, with Will, Marcus, Tom, Ryan, Maz, but I mean, even last year, Courier, McKay, all of these guys, Sankey, they're all just so talented. And, I definitely am one of those players that, when I'm surrounded by, better players and unbelievable talent, I think I'm able to kind of elevate my game to their standards. And I also think I just have more fun. It's a great brand of lacrosse that we play. And it's just a lot of fun to be a part of. And, being a part of that locker room my rookie year, I couldn't be more thankful for the off the field things and, the leadership of the Archers in Tom, Rat, and Marcus. Those are three of the best leaders that I've ever played with. And, they're teaching me much more than, I expected to get out of year one in terms of off the field stuff too.
That jump up to the pro game, we watched you seamlessly make that leap, something that not everyone is able to do, not just in lacrosse. We see it in almost every sport. Again, you made it look fairly easy. How did you manage to do that?
Yeah, I mean, I think it comes down to that, right? The leadership in the locker room, the leadership that I was playing with. When you have a guy like Tom Schreiber just telling you, "Hey, man, you belong here. Play like it." That he's one of those guys that your confidence points increase, or if not double. When you have that, and same with Marcus, same with Scott, same with Will. Same with these guys. I think. The veterans on this team just did a great job of creating a locker room where I felt comfortable from day one. And, you don't see that a lot throughout lacrosse, but also in sports, right? You got to earn your way kind of normally. And, but these guys kind of just welcomed me with open arms. And I think it just allowed me to play the way I'm capable of. And it also allowed me to play with a little bit of confidence, knowing that, all right, I don't know these guys that well, but I know they have my back. So, that side of things mentally is one of the biggest things that you got to get by as a rookie, because, you are nervous the first few games. Like I'll be lying if I said I wasn't, but, when you got guys that are just in your corner and supporting you, it makes it really, really easy.
Getting comfortable, getting settled in here in the PLL. No-look passes in overtime, cartwheels after goals, making the game look easy, and having fun while doing it, as you said. Huge 2020 for you. And now you're coming into this 2021 season. We had the schedule drop earlier this week, as we're now about a month and a half out from opening weekend. But for you as a PA guy, you and your team are going to have to get to the semifinals if you want that hometown game in Philly. But looking at how these games are laid out, where are you most looking forward to playing? And you're playing each team once, and then the Chaos and Whipsnakes a second time in Week 8, the two teams that played in the 2020 championship game. Where are you most excited to play, and which games are you guys circling heading into the season?
Yeah, I mean, the beauty of pro lacrosse that I love, and you see it a little bit in this college season, right? The ACC Big Ten gauntlet, right?
That's what we've been calling it. That's what we've been calling
it. That's what pro lacrosse is, right? There's no safe lead. There's no, especially with the 2-point arc, how quickly the field's a little bit shorter, the game's a little faster, right? There's no comfortable lead. But two, it's pretty hard to get a comfortable lead because these guys are so good. So, all in all, I think we are just excited as a team to just, one, have a full summer. I haven't had a season yet, right? I haven't had a true pro season. So I'm really excited for just the experience, right? To, get to travel a little bit, but also get to go through the ebbs and flows of the season, because I think in the tournament setup, it's a sprint, right? It's not a marathon, but a long-term season, right? There's more structure, there's strategy, there's a little bit more that goes into it that I think actually bodes better into our favor. but I think it bodes well just to anybody. I mean, like you ask any guy in the league, like nobody felt great going into those playoffs because, you play 6 games or 5 games like back to back to back. And, you're not getting the best product on the field. So I think we're all excited for it. But, you mentioned it, the Whips and the Chaos, we played them twice and we lost. Those are the 2 teams we lost to last year. So, in terms of, games that I have circled, I would say those, but you can make a storyline about any team that we play. Water Dogs playing against Sabia, the Atlas, always a good one, getting to compete against Tucker Durkin. It's Redwoods now, they're pretty freaking good. Like the show goes on and being able to have those connections on the other side of the ball, it makes it a little bit more fun, makes you play with a little bit more of an edge. But, all in all, I think really just excited for the opportunity to just get to compete and get to play with fans a full summer and feel like a pro athlete again.
There's so much talent in this league. And really, I mean, we're still looking at the player pool for the waiver period. And it's like you could probably make another full team out of all these guys that are still unsigned. And then we look at the schedule. It's laid out in a way where there are 5 games over the 3-day weekend, a game on Friday, 2 on Saturday, and then 2 on Sunday, where those teams on Friday play again. You look back now on that 2020 tournament. How do you see your team's success? As you're saying, you only lost 2 games, obviously losing in that semifinal. But how do you see your team's success over that condensed season carrying over into this season, where your team, like the other 7 teams, will play 2 games over the same weekend twice? For your team, week 4 in Long Island, and then the last weekend of the season, week 8 in Albany.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's definitely, it helped us that we were able to play such condensed times, but I think it's going to be up to each guy individually to create a strategy, right? We don't have practice during the week or anything like that, so it's hard to be strategic in that regard. But I do think that playing in that tournament style last year will prepare guys. But at the end of the day, it's going to come down to, we're going to need to be smart on those Friday nights after the game, prioritize recovery. And then Saturday, probably get in. We'll probably do a practice or a walkthrough with some cleanup with stuff. And then it's going to be mostly dedicated to recovery. So, I learned very quickly, especially in the tournament play, you're only as good as you feel. So, that's going to be priority number 1. And then, obviously as time goes on, I think we'll be able to figure it out a little bit more. But yeah, that puts a little wrinkle in things in terms of strategy and in terms of the way that we're, approaching the game. But, all in all, I think the biggest thing that it comes down to is if we have buy-in from every guy that we have suiting up for us in terms of, their physical nature and making sure they feel good on game day, I'm pretty confident in what we can, put in terms of a product on the field.
We are all looking forward to this 2021 season. A lot of lacrosse coming our way. For your team, it starts Saturday night, June 5th at 7:45 Eastern at Gillette Stadium against this new-look Atlas team in the pick after you in last year's college draft, Brian Costabile. So we're all looking forward to that one. Grant, your head coach, Chris Bates, he's been pretty active here over this offseason. It's not Ben Rubier active or Sean Quirk active. Obviously, Quirk having a busy offseason as the expansion head coach, but Chris Bates has been making some moves so far this offseason, and it started with the trade that saw your team acquire Attackman Connor Fields, another weapon on offense that we are all excited to see suit up in orange and play alongside yourself and the other pieces on this team, especially on this offense. How does he fit in with what you guys are trying to do offensively, and what excites you most about getting a chance to play with a guy like him?
Yeah. I mean, first and foremost, obviously the trade was done through Ian McKay, and Ian and I roomed together for the tournament last year and got to know each other before the tournament. So would be wrong of me to not, thank him for, all of his efforts towards the Archers and also just his friendship with me. It's going to be a little weird not having him off the field more so than on the field because he's such a character. But in terms of Connor, I mean, there's just not a whole lot that he can't do. He can play with the ball on a stick. He can play in a 2-man. He can play off ball. He can, find different ways. He's extremely creative, which, I love because I don't think it's unnecessarily creative. I think he just understands the angles and the nuances with his stick. And, as a fan of the game first myself, that's going to be pretty fun to play with and learn from. Then again, like we look at this and, he just creates kind of a whole nother realm of opportunities for us because of his versatility and his ability to not only break down defenders, but, get creative. He's obviously great in the box game and has, like I said, the 2-man kind of ability on that lefty wing, which with our pairs offense, I mean, that'll fit in really, really well. And all in all, everybody kind of, talks about last year and, he'll be the first one to say, I wasn't as productive as I was the year before and all this stuff. But I mean, my thoughts are, if you don't think that kid's coming out with a chip on his shoulder, ready to go. I mean, he was the best attackman in the league, 2 years ago. So, arguably, I mean, obviously Rambo got voted number 1, but I mean, Fields was doing some stupid stuff on the field, and to be able to suit up alongside one of those guys, a guy like that, and add him to our arsenal. Yeah, there's that. I mean, you can see it in my face, but I think all in all, he just creates so much for us, and it'll be a huge add-in. And we've already been on the phone a few times and just trying to get to know each other a little bit before. But hopefully once we get there, we get the chemistry flowing in training camp, and then we can put it on the field week 1.
We're all very excited to see what Fields brings to this Archers offense here in 2021 and going forward. And then you bring up Ian McKay. We talked to Coach Towers early in the week. He's very excited to have Ian McKay join his team. Obviously, as you said, your roommate there during the PLL bubble. You talked about the importance of kind of that veteran leadership. Losing Ian McKay, definitely a big loss there for your team. Coach Bates, though, pretty quiet then following that trade, but then made a few splashes in the entry draft and during the waiver period. He used 2 of his entry draft selections, including his first pick at 2nd overall to bolster up your team's defense. And then he also added Latrell Harris and Nick Washuta to add some depth on the other end in waivers as well. But then on the offensive end, midfielder Ryan McNamara was available in the 2nd round, and Coach Bates grabbed him, a natural scorer and finisher. He had 5 goals in the MLL bubble a year ago, and then attackman Nate Solomon picked up and brought in through the waivers. What kind of impact do you expect these 2 guys to make in joining this already loaded Archers offense?
Yeah, I mean, our mentality is the more firepower, the better. And so, we're excited to be able to add those guys. I think Ryan is a very underrated player. He can shoot the crap out of the ball. He can dodge, he can break down. I've been watching him kind of since his Marquette days. And, he definitely is one of those guys that kind of similar to Connor. Like he can do it all. He can play a role, and, he's great. And then Nate and I played together in the Under Armour All-American game when we were seniors in high school. So got to know him briefly there, but, obviously had a great career at Syracuse and was, I believe, a 4-time starter at Syracuse, which not many people say that they can do. So, he's definitely an accomplished player. So, yeah, I mean, we're going to be going to training camp definitely a little bit heavy on the offensive end and defensive end for that regard. I mean, I think you kind of briefed over it, but we just picked up probably the best D guy in the league in Graham. So, talking to Rob Pinnell about him, because they matched up together in the World Games and a little bit in the MLL. He was just like, that's a legit pull right there. And that's not, I think we already have 2 legit pulls in Matt and, in Eli. So, we've got 2 really good guys, and to add a 3rd, and then, to add Warren, and, we just basically just added just a lot more talent in general. And I think Coach Bates did a phenomenal job with it. Obviously I texted Graham when he got picked up. I was like, I'm really happy we're not going to be going against each other every week. And his response, I think, was something along the lines of, don't worry, dude, we still have a week of training camp.
Yeah, I was about to say, you're not going against him every weekend. You're going to probably be going up against him in practice, though, I would imagine.
Yeah. So that'll be great, though. It'll be a really good challenge for me. He's got phenomenal feet. He's huge. He's got a great stick. He can lay the lumber. I mean, he reminds me of almost like a like a lefty Tucker Durkin a little bit, like that mean streak kind of style. And Tucker, everybody knows who Tuck is. So I think he's just going to do so well for us and provide a big spark and really just a huge edge for us, because he plays with that box style and that Canadian flair. And for us, I think that's going to be huge, because he's going to add a little oomph to us, and also adds a little bit of size and allows us to play a little bit better against those two-headed monsters or three-headed monsters that some of these teams have on attack.
We had Eli Gobrecht on this show last Tuesday, and we were joking about the man-down kind of combinations, not even thinking about just regular 6-on-6, man-down combinations. We might see Graham Hossig running out there with a short stick, and then it's just like the offensive guys on the other side should be horrified. Like, from what I've heard, what Graham Hossig brings to the table, both with a pull, without a pull, they should be scared. Just throw that out there for everybody else in the league. But then you also, like you said, Connor Fields, Ryan McNamara, Nate Solomon, and then Coach Bates owns the 5th overall college draft pick, as well as the 5th picks in rounds 2 and 3. So possibly more offensive talent set to join this Archers group ahead of the 2021 season. We'll wait and see what Coach Bates does with those selections. And we've talked extensively on this show about all the offensive talent coming into the league through this draft. One of those guys being a guy you know very well in Mac O'Keefe, a former teammate of yours at Penn State, one of the best shooters and finishers in the game. And he was on the other end of a large majority of those assists that you were able to pile up over your college career. And really, the dilemma we continue to hear and talk about is that he is one of the best talents in this draft. Like, that's a no-brainer. And it warrants being one of those first players taken, but there's already so many lefty finishers in this league. I mean, we're seeing it firsthand with names like Mark Matthews, Kevin Crawley. They're still unsigned in the player pool. But then you look at it again, it's like O'Keefe might be better than all of them. And it's not just those two guys still in the player pool, but like most of the lefty shooters in this league, arguably, I would say most of them. So a few of these head coaches might have to make a tough decision in what would be probably passing on him, because selecting him seems like a pretty easy choice. And then Coach Bates might even be included in that group and forced to make a decision on passing on him and selecting one of these other talented players in the pool. But what will Mac O'Keefe bring to a lucky PLL team, not just on the field, but what he brings to a locker room and then to a team culture?
Yeah, I actually just got a text from him.
He's listening to us right now. Even though this isn't live, he's listening to us right now.
Mac will be the best in terms of lefties. Mac will be the best stretch shooter that's a lefty. I mean, there's the kids. I mean, in 2019, he was shooting the ball like 45%, and they were from like 16 yards out. Like you can't argue that. And Mac is a pure. I don't call him a shooter. I call him a scorer, because he's just one of those guys that I don't know how to describe it. He's just one of those guys that just the ball goes in the back of the net for him. Like he's confident in himself. He can shoot the ball at such a clip that it's not necessarily his speed. I mean, he can shoot the crap out of the ball. It's more so, in my opinion, the way that I see it is his quick release, right? So if he's getting a skip pass across the top, the goalie's turning, and by the moment he sets his feet, the ball's on top of them, right? You're not going to react to that well. So, on field, I think, if anybody's overlooking him because he's not having as productive of a year, I mean, I think he's still averaging 3 or 4 a game, but as productive of a year, you got to look at what's going on around him a little bit. That's not to say that Penn State isn't talented at all. I think there's so much talent on that team that's, unfortunately it's towards the tail end of the season. I still think there's a lot left to be uncovered for them. But I think in general, Mac is just one of those guys. He's not going to bring, the loud personality to the locker room. He's a quiet dude. But he's one of those dudes that kind of just, sticks to himself in terms of game day stuff and all that, but, does not bring much drama to a locker room, does not bring, any antics or anything like that. He's low-key one of the most competitive dudes I've ever met. And I think people will be surprised to hear that, because when you think of an off-ball scorer, you think of a guy who just right place, right time all the time. But you look at it the way that he is off the ground, the way that he rides, There's so much care from him, and I don't think that you get that from all attackmen, let alone all attackmen that can score like him. So all in all, I mean, I could go on for hours about the guy, but he's been an incredible teammate and friend to me throughout our time together and still now. But I think also more importantly, I think he's just a guy that's going to fit in anywhere that you put him, and his talents will be used on the field. You just got to find a way to use them.
Your team picks 5th overall. It doesn't look like Coach Bates will select O'Keefe after some of those additions he's made this offseason. But if I've learned anything over the past 2 years covering this league, is that whatever you think will happen, just expect, or the exact opposite probably will happen. So we will see how all of that unfolds. The Atlas have 4 picks in the first 11 selections, and I can't imagine O'Keefe is still available come pick 12 for Crum. And he's really one of a few solid attackmen ahead of this draft. Michael Sowers, Jared Bernhardt looking like 2 of the top prospects. Jeff T and Ryan Tierney, Jake Caraway, Ethan Walker, some of the other names that we should see taken at some point, probably early in this draft. Which one of these guys, or possibly someone that I didn't just mention right there, but who are you excited to see make that step up to the pro game?
Yeah, I mean, obviously Mike, just because Mike and I go back from our youth days and we train together in the off, or like in the winter, and text here and there. Obviously he's somebody who I'm excited to see make that next step, because I think he's earned that right in a lot of ways. But I mean, Jared is. There isn't a defender in the country that can cover Jared Bernhardt right now. And that's just a fact. He is, and I've talked with some Penn State guys, but also just guys who have defended him. His straightaway speed got better playing football this fall, and he's
a scary thing to think.
Yeah, he's really just a gifted athlete, and that Maryland team is really, really good right now. Just in general, Maryland's that right now, especially, they're just a team that doesn't make mistakes. Like, they don't make dumb mistakes. They're buttoned up. They're, in terms of their riding, their clearing, their X's and O's, right? They're not making stupid mistakes at all. You need to beat them straight up, and they will never beat themselves. And I think Jared kind of plays that way too. I think he's not a guy that's going to have dumb turnovers or anything like that. He lets the game kind of come to him. And I actually like that he's been a little bit more selfish this year. I think he was way too passive in years, at least in my opinion, in terms of his ability to dodge and create. I think he was really passive in his younger years. But he also had good guys on the right. He had like Connor Kelly and Rambo and all these guys. But he's really come into an unbelievable player this year after he was already an unbelievable player. So he's another guy. And then you mentioned these other guys, and I mean, Jeff Teet's not even playing this year, and he's arguably one of the best players I've ever competed against. So it's so stacked in that regard. And I'm just really excited to be able to have the opportunity to either suit up with or compete against a lot of these guys, because that's when you kind of learn a little bit about yourself, but also you learn some new tricks and stuff.
Handful of attackmen entering this draft. Not just attackmen, obviously very talented across the board. And another former teammate of yours at the Face-Off X, Gerard Arceri, looks like he'll have his name called most likely at some point during this upcoming draft as well. Dan Arestia on his early college draft big board has Arceri as his 3rd best draw guy in the draft pool. There's a handful of teams in need of another face-off guy. Your team being one of them, and he's probably looking like a 3rd or 4th round pick, so maybe available there towards the latter parts of the draft. Him coming into this league, what does he bring to the table?
Yeah, I mean, Jerry's a competitive dude. He's obviously talented as all hell, and one of those guys that works. I mean, he works really freaking hard at his craft, and it's one thing I always have respected from him. Extra weight room sessions, extra field sessions. He's really elevated that position, specifically at Penn State. I think he's done a great job in mentoring, the younger guys. I think that goes under the radar a lot of the time. And, he's a obviously a phenomenal player. I think he's got decent offensive capability, which teams like in the PLL. You need to be able to go to the goal, and I think it may not always be pretty, but he finds a way to the goal. And he's also played in big moments. I think that's a big thing that people need to look into in these drafts, like these playoff moments, like see how guys react, see how they play. I look at Gerard and going against TD against Yale in the semifinals. He showed a lot of freaking resilience in that game, and going down 10-1 against them, him losing every single face-off to then clawing back and ending up, I think he ended up at like a 40% clip or 50% clip that game. That says a lot about his ability to react to adversity. And face-offs in this league are so crucial, but they're also there's so much talent, so that might happen some games. And I think coaches, in terms of what to look for, I think that's a great example of the type of kid that he is the last one doesn't necessarily mean that this one's going to go bad. So I'm excited to see what he can do, and excited to hopefully have another PSU guy in the league.
From the few guys I've talked to, face-off guys, it's you got to have a short memory. You can't be it's like the last one happened. It's like, all right, that happened. It's over. Move on to the next one. Arseri posting a 56% face-off clip over 8 games this season, 61% on his career. We will wait and see where he falls on draft night. But Grant, I've been trying over the last week or so to get some wind behind the sails for Coach Bates to make a move up in round 1 and secure Mr. TD. Looking at your team post-entry draft, that looks like the one glaring spot, but we will see. We will wait and see how the next week and a half unfolds ahead of the college draft. Hopefully a blockbuster move like that to get some people talking, but a handful of good face-off men available. We'll see if your team takes one of them. But speaking of Penn State, you're hosting Michigan tomorrow night. For everyone watching and listening, that is tonight at 5 p.m. Eastern on the Big Ten Network. Not exactly, as you were saying before, the season that you guys were hoping for. You sit at 2-6 right now, but this home game tonight against Michigan is really important because the last time these two teams met in Ann Arbor, Michigan won 14-12, but Michigan is also 2-6. So seeding ahead of the Big Ten tournament at stake here, trying to get a home playoff game for that first round. If you can get the 4 seed, what does Penn State need to do to get this one?
Yeah, I mean, I think everybody asks about X's and O's and what's going wrong and all this stuff. I don't think it has. I think it has very little to do with X's and O's. I think if we win the middle of the field, we'll win the game. So ride backs, ground balls, run outs, getting back on defense, stopping transit, like just little things that are just effort plays. Because if you look at our 2019 season and our success, and even in the 2020 season, obviously we had talent, but there was so much more that I think went into it. And I think if you look at guys that graduated over those 2 years, you've got a lot of guys that meant a lot to that locker room that graduated, and also that meant a lot to the team on game day. I look at a guy like Tommy Wright, who played for the Lizards last year, 3-year starter, and whenever the ball was on the ground, Tommy was on the ground. Whenever the ball was on the ground, Robbie Black was on the ground. You got so many of these guys that I think just gave such an effort, and were taped together at the end of every game. And that's really what I'm hoping to see. I'm hoping just to see a phenomenal effort out of the guys, because I do think they have the talent. But in terms of our success as a team in 2019, it had very little to do with that. It had more to do with, all right, like I'm willing to compete a little bit more than this team that we're going against today. So, I think that's a big aspect of it. I also think that, the more that we can, limit those transition opportunities and limit those unnecessary turnovers, that'll probably help in the long run. But truly, talking to both guys on the team and guys that I graduated with, Michigan is a talented team. But if you play 4 quarters against them, it's an easily winnable game. The issue is playing those 4 quarters is a little bit easier said than done. So that's my hope, and it's senior day for these guys. So my biggest hope for the game is Mac to break the record, and we all celebrate for him, and they get a win, and then they go in and host a home game for that first round of that Big Ten playoffs.
That is the plan. Playing this tough Big Ten schedule here in 2021. Penn State hoping to get out of these last few weeks of the regular season and position themselves ahead of the Big Ten tournament. And then I'd imagine to get an NCAA tournament bid, they would need to win the conference. So we'll watch to see what the Nittany Lions can do over these next few weeks. Grant, I want to thank you so much for joining us, my man. I heard you're keeping the ankle socks around for 2021. Was that an easy decision? I saw you're getting some pressure over it.
We got them, bro. We got them.
There we go.
There you go. We're good to go. Yeah, no, I'm keeping them. Apparently Hasek's an ankle sock guy, so we'll see it. I never knew wearing a piece of clothing could get so much buzz for that when it was. I just think they're more comfortable in the summer. I think they're a more comfortable sock. My legs get sweaty.
Hey, valid argument. Very valid argument. I would have to agree with that. Grant, appreciate you taking the time to come on the show. Grant Ament and the Archers ready to get after it in 2021, opening the season June 5th against the Atlas. Take it easy, my man. Hope to talk to you soon.
Awesome. Thanks, Ryan. I appreciate it, man.
All right, everyone, that is going to do it for our 8th show here of Goal Line Extended. I want to thank you all for watching and or listening. If you are not already, make sure to subscribe to the show on YouTube as well as on whatever podcast platform that you use. Search up Goal Line Extended, and you should be able to find it. You can also head on over to the Lacrosse Flash website, lacrosseflash.com. All of our podcasts are there as well as stories and articles covering all the latest news in lacrosse, particularly an article written by Austin Owens, who was just on the show today looking at the team needs ahead of the PLL College Draft, as well as an article breaking down the 2021 season schedule. So make sure to check that out. You can also follow Goal Line Extended on Instagram and Twitter at GL Extended. All of the links that you will need will be in the description of the video or podcast that you're viewing or listening to right now. We will be back on Tuesday to look back at the weekend slate of college lacrosse games. We'll be looking ahead to the PLL College Draft and then whatever else goes down in the world of lacrosse. You know we will be here to discuss it, so make sure to follow and subscribe so that you don't miss the show. I hope you all have an incredible weekend, and we will see you on Tuesday.
Follow the show on Twitter and Instagram at GL Extended and subscribe to the show on any of your favorite podcast outlets. You can find Lacrosse Flash on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook, and online at lacrosseflash.com.